you've achieved. What do you think has been the key to Norwich's success this season?
I think hard work and togetherness. I think nothing can be achieved that's any good unless a group of people work really hard together and with the same direction and take some risks and have real belief in the plan and what you're doing. And I think what's come through this year, endless times, has been the way the spirit and the togetherness and the hard work shows. Whether that's late goals, late winners, digging in and getting clean sheets, going to places which are really hard to play in. I think that's shown through, and what's been really pleasing from the club side is this group of players and staff have always remained true to our values as a club, and that's really important because they're not just words written on the wall. They're important things for our football club, and I think if you do that and you work hard every day, you end up getting the results, and that's what we've done, which is great.
It's 2 years since you came in. When you look back over that time, what's the biggest thing you've done? What's the biggest change or biggest decision you think you've made?
It's a tough one. I think there's been so many, and there's probably not a one sort of answer for that. I think it was a club that when we joined needed a lot of things to happen. We were on a real slippy slope financially, and we had to change that. But we also had to try and come up with a way of playing. We had to try and reinvent what we were doing in terms of the youth policy. We had to redo what we were doing from a recruitment point of view. So many things. But then what was central to that, we had to get our culture right and we had to get our people right, because you can have the best players and the best recruitment in the world. If your culture and your people aren't right, it doesn't work. So we had to start from there, and that was difficult because a club like this, as I found coming from the outside, is it's the only club in the region. So everyone supports the club. It's the only professional sporting venue in the region. So it's under great microscope. Don't get me wrong, not the level of world class sort of clubs like Man United, etc. But it's under a lot of a microscope. So everything we did was scrutinised. There's 2 daily newspapers, there's a daily radio. So every decision we made was constantly sort of scrutinised, and that was difficult because unfortunately things don't happen overnight. And it was tough trying to keep to the plan, keep everyone to a level, keep communicating the plan, try and not make it look like we just want excuses to find time. The reason we've tried to be honest was, this is what we are going through, and hopefully now people have seen that, we told the truth and, we've got to a decent ending.
Stuart, how different was this season and what you've achieved here so far to what you've done previously at Huddersfield?
Yeah, very different, because Huddersfield, there was no expectation. It was a big surprise what we did there in terms of bringing in a foreign coach, completely unknown foreign coach, bringing in completely unknown foreign players. So we did that. It was almost the first time there, but it was done under the safety of a great owner, but an owner who does risk versus reward, and he was like, well, let's give it a go, let's see what happens. So it was almost done with no real pressure. I knew when I stepped in the door here and we were going to do something similar, I knew straight away I'd get hammered for, he's just done what he's done before, he's trying to copy it, because that's what happens. But when it's a deep philosophy and a deep belief, it's like, on a personal level, I had to ignore all of that and go, this is actually what I believe in. So it's been a lot more difficult here because of the lazy comparisons, because it's really easy for people to just chuck, he's just copying what I did before. It's just easy, that's what people do. So it's been more difficult here because it's been done under much more of a bigger sort of scope, and everyone thinking, is it possible to do it twice? Because I think you can get lucky once, of course, or it can work once. Doing it a second time can be pretty a bit more challenging. So I think it's definitely been more pleasing here.
But you have done it twice now. So the first time may have been seen as a one-off. Now you've done it twice. This works.
It seems to. Not sure it'll be a third time, but it seems to. It's difficult to sort of explain really, because when you have a way of doing it, it's probably like you guys in your job. You have a way of reporting or doing whatever, and it works for you or your organisation. The philosophy works for me and what I believe my footballing beliefs are. So I never saw it as copying. I just saw it as bringing my beliefs to a different football club, and there'll be another day I'll probably go to a different club and I'll take my beliefs there. So for me it's seen as my way. That the difficult part here was we always brought another coach from Borussia Dortmund, so that's where it opened up the comparisons.
And previously, in this league and most other leagues, the idea of getting success is just throw so much money at it, eventually it'll work. This has been the other way. Your top scorer cost nothing, when Dia, who's been outstanding, cost a couple of million quid or whatever, and young players have come in. I mean, is that a blueprint other clubs should be following? And is that one you're taking to the Premier League?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if a club should follow it because every club's different. But I've always got annoyed with the myths around football, certainly around the Championship. I hate the comment, what are they going to be like when it's cold on the Tuesday night in Rotherham? And it's like, well, you go and play football in Denmark like Phuket, it's cold every night. And I think it's just lazy. I think we in football, we love lazy excuses, whether you work in it, whether you do your jobs of, well, they won't be very good when it rains or whatever. It's not the only country in the world that rains, believe it or not, in England. Go to Germany, trust me, it's horrendous. So I think it's always been about dispelling that myth. We have big beliefs in young players. You know, a senior player will find his way around a wall, a young player will run through it, and there's a lot to be said for that. And if you look at the relentless nature of the Championship, it's 46 games plus minimum 2 cup games. You've got to have people who can run and are energetic and enthusiastic. You have a team of old men, in my opinion, you don't get promoted unless you're special like Neil Warnock, who he does it that way, and that's where, you know, he's unbelievable. I get on great with him and I have unbelievable respect because of how he does it. I don't necessarily enjoy watching it, but huge respect of how he does it, and I don't know how we can get senior players to do that every time for him. Is amazing. But I think then in terms of the blueprint going forward, it has to be that, because we're not a club with the conditions. We will have the smallest budget in the league. We'll spend the least money in the league. I can guarantee that now. So we have to find a way of doing it, and we have to keep investing in our young players, in our staff, in our facilities, in our environment, in our culture. And fundamentally, if that's not enough for us to stay in the Premier League or thrive in the Premier League, well, so be it. But we'll come back and we'll be a lot stronger than we are sat here today. And I think for us as a club, we've got clear directions from the owners, clear directions from the exec committee as to this is what we are, and we're not ashamed to admit it. We're not the guys who are going to live in a dream world. It's like, no, this is what we are, and it's done well for us so far. We've just got to keep doing it. Can we do it better in the Premier League? Hopefully. But if we can't, we dust ourselves off and we go again.
Stuart, you talk about that sort of deep belief in your philosophy, and clearly you have a real belief in the manager and it's paid off. But were there any times, particularly at the start of the season, when there was a bit of a hangover from the last season, where that belief was tested?
No. For the simple fact is, a lot of people talk about the start of this season. I get it, because we lost 3 out of the first 6, so it's natural if you're on the outside to go, they've lost 3 out of the first 6, they must be rubbish. But we still look back at them games, and when you analyse them, Birmingham away, first game we drew 2 each, we should win the game. Look at the season Birmingham had, especially at St Andrews, that now looks like a decent point. We played West Brom here, and it was the most bizarre, it's still in my opinion one of our best performances this season. We lose 4-3, we miss a penalty, Tim Krul makes a bad mistake, and suddenly you go on from going to win the game to losing, and you're sat there at the end going, how have we lost that? Then we lose at Sheffield United away, 95th minute, after 5 minutes earlier missing a 1-against-1 to potentially win the game. Then we play Preston at home, we beat them. Then we played Leeds at home, we're 2-0 down after 30 minutes. But still the first 25s is up there as one of our best parts. So we were always calm inside because we knew it was that close in terms of performance. And we always talk about, if we get our processes right, that leads to performance and that leads to result. And we had a meeting just before the start of the Middlesbrough game where it was like, we are that close to being a really, really good team. And then we went on an unbelievable run. So through that first 6 game, you know, while the outside was going a bit crazy, and I get it because you lose 3 of the first 6, it's a story. But for us, we were like, no, actually, we're that close. We are that close, and so that's why we never lost belief. And most important for us in terms of a head coach and how he works is during the periods, whether it's last season or this season, is does he waver from his beliefs? That's when it's game over, is when he starts to listen to the noise or do things which are out of character, and at no point did he do that, and that was the most important thing because we've always strongly believed in him. That's why we brought him here, and that's why we've supported him. He really believes in us as a club, which is vitally important. So yeah, he was never under any pressure.
You already just said that you're likely to be the club that spends the least next season. When you look back at sort of Fulham last year, spending lots and lots of money, teams going up, did you sort of just look at that and think that's never going to work, or is it just different for every club?
I think it's different for every club, and I always, it's really hard to judge a club unless you're in there, because you don't know what challenges they're going through, what pressure they're on from maybe their owners or whatever. So it's really hard to comment on other clubs. I certainly wouldn't appreciate people commenting on our club unless you're here because you know you're not in it. But yeah, for us, luckily that's not even an option because we don't have the money to do that. So we don't even have to weigh up should we or shouldn't we. We don't have that possibility. But you know, for us as well, if you look at the dressing room and the culture and the values and the behaviours that we live by every day, it actually wouldn't work for us if we brought in a player who cost £20 million and was on a salary double anyone else in the dressing room. That wouldn't fit our club. and we're big believers in we are what we are, and you know, we don't bring people in if they don't fit in. It's, you know, if it doesn't work for them, that's fine. We'd rather not have you, because we believe there's lots of other players out there, there's lots of other staff out there that, you know what, if you're a superstar but you don't fit us, that's all right. We don't actually need you. We'll go and find somebody else. So we can't go against them values, because when we do go against it, then it definitely won't work for us.
How much of a difference did it make to the team selling James Maddison? Because obviously he's gone on to do so well. Made the England squad last year. He was fantastic for Norwich, but it seems at times like everything was going through him. Was that almost like, despite him being such a talent, it improved the team many times over from letting him go?
I think with James, listen, he's a top player and he'll play for England, and I think he'll play for a Champions League club at some point. And he's another one when you talk about a lad. You know, he's one of the first text messages I received the other day was off him. You know, and I think that sums him up. And he was the same with a lot of the staff here and a lot of people that he's worked with. He's a genuinely great guy. But what always happens when someone leaves, it creates opportunity for others. And when he left, we could have done two things. We could have cried and moaned. We could have just gone, oh, we've lost our best player, and what do we do now? We've got no chance this season. Or we go, well, actually, that's happening, and we knew it was going to happen for months. So it wasn't a surprise when the call came off Leicester. It wasn't like, oh my God, I didn't see that coming. We knew it was coming, so we had no excuse but to be prepared for it. So we were preparing for months of life without James and what opportunities that could give us in the squad. And what it did do, it gave us opportunities to strengthen in different areas, bring maybe a slightly different profile of player in, and create more of a sort of team. And I think we did that, and I think in the end it's worked out brilliant. He's got a great move. Leicester have got themselves a top player, and you know, we've had a pretty successful season as well. So it's it's a nice story.
Stuart, just to follow up on that question, when James Maddison had that injury about this time last season, and there were maybe some worries that it could have been quite a serious one, how worried were you within the club? Obviously Ed Balls has written since the promotion, obviously former chairman here, that there were a hairy few days because that transfer had perhaps been agreed and the money was so crucial for the club. Was there a moment where you were sort of really fingers crossed that this injury wasn't too bad and he could make that move to get the money?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, the transfer hadn't been agreed, and we hadn't even spoke to a club at that point. But yeah, it was an important moment. If he would have been out for, I don't know, 9 months or something, I'm sure the deal wouldn't have happened, and you know, we would have probably had to sell more players then to cover off the gap which would have been left by him staying here. So yeah, listen, it would have been a disaster. There's no way of dressing it up. If he would have been out for 9 months and not been sold at that point, that would have been a disaster. So I remember going down at half time and speaking to the physios, and you get that look of this isn't going to be good news before you even speak, and I was like, oh my God. And then the next 2-3 days were nervous until he had his scan, and then it was like, okay, it's not as bad as we first thought. That was some relief. But that Sunday night, we just got beat 5-1 at Sheffield. We had everyone slagging us off in the media, in Twitter and all the rest of it. James Maddison, big hope for sorting the summer out, was injured. That was a tough Sunday night, I've got to say.
And you spoke about the local scrutiny in the county because of the nature of where you are and what's around. Do you feel, I don't know how much attention you pay to it, but do you feel that nationally you've actually perhaps almost gone the other way and gone a little bit under the radar, what with the story of Leeds and them sort of dominating the agenda? Do you feel there's an element of that which sort of goes against what's maybe happened locally?
Yeah, I mean, obviously locally the guys have got their job to do, and you know, people buy the newspaper because they support the club, and that's great, and that's why we have a really good relationship with them. But I think nationally, I mean, we've not taken too much notice, but you know, all I hear about is, you know, Frank Lampard's derby, Leeds United because it's Leeds United, Aston Villa, you know, Chris Wilder and Sheffield United because of the amazing job that he's done there. And so for us, if we've not had that, we're not overly worried or concerned about that. We'd rather be in the background and not getting the attention, because you know, we just want to do our jobs, go home, and hopefully do them well. So yeah, we'll let the plaudits for the so-called bigger club. Yeah.
Can I just ask, the role of director of football, or technical director of a particular brand, you call it, is kind of coming under the microscope with Man United at the moment, and obviously that's your position here and Huddersfield as well. Is it almost strange for any club now, particularly in the Premier League, but Championship, maybe it's a bit different when you go further down with fewer resources, but is it strange for a club not to go down that route now in modern football? Is it almost impossible not to?
Yeah, in my opinion, it's impossible not to, just because the size of the job now for a head coach or manager has become so much bigger. And certainly if you're in the Premier League, the amount of just media alone they have to do means, how can you do all of that and all of the other things? I think it's impossible. And my deep belief's always been the manager should be the best coach on the pitch. Well, he needs to be on the pitch coaching players. It's no good if he's sat worrying about a sports science meeting, a recruitment meeting, going to meet a player in South America, and it's like, oh, the team are underprepared on Saturday. Oh yeah, no, sorry about that. It's because I've been 4 days away travelling Europe, speaking to players and agents. So for me, it's, that's why it's worked in Europe for so long. Is the role is much bigger than that. I think it's different back in the day when, for example, Sir Alex and people like that, because he was like that was his club, and they had all his top coaches around him, so he could probably afford to not be at the training ground maybe for 2 days because he was meeting a player or doing stuff, because literally he was the club, wasn't he? Whereas I think the job nowadays has become sort of so big that these head coaches and managers need support, and I think they also need they need security with them. They need to. It shouldn't be one job for one man, in my opinion. I think it's too big for that, and what I hate is when managers get put on a pedestal of when it's going wrong, if it's all of his, and it's like, well, what about the club? Like, where's the chief exec in this? Where's the sporting director in this? Where's the owner in this? Because it should be all one. Don't get me wrong, the guy has to stand in front of you guys every week and is almost a spokesman for the club weekly, and I appreciate that, but I think as a club, clubs should be bigger than one person, and they should also be really there to support and back the head coach. And if you look at Daniel's time here, or David, because everyone forgets back at Huddersfield, we finished 19th in the first season. We lost the last 2 games 4-0 and 5-1. But it's the same thing of, no, we stand together and we take that, rather than, go on David, sorry mate, yeah, ask him all the questions. It can't be that. It has to be successful, it has to be a group of people working together. And then likewise, when it goes wrong, you have to back each other up and look after him. And that's why at no point, the last 18 months, 2 years with Daniel here, even when it's going difficult, I'd rather speak to you guys when it's going wrong than when it's well, because when it's well, it should be about the players and Daniel and the staff. But when it's going wrong, he shouldn't be left alone. It should be, I'll do this one for you. And I think I have to do that. And I think for the next generation of our coaches in our country, because I get a bit of grief because I've brought in 2 foreign ones now. I'd love to bring a young British one in, but they've got to open their mind that they need help, because too many of our young British ones get an opportunity. They maybe get someone who's 30 years older around them who tell them, sort out your divorce before you get married, you're going to get a sack, you need to get experience around you. And they go against their own philosophy because they've got someone who failed 20 years earlier telling them what to do, rather than, let's create an environment where our young coaches, take Steve Cooper, he's won the World Cup with England in the 17s, he's qualified for the 17s this year, got to a final year, he's a top young coach. He needs to be given the opportunity, but he needs to come in a club where he's got support and security, because what people always forget, we talk about young players developing and we go, they'll make mistakes, they'll get things wrong. So will coaches. So we've got to be there to support them. So it shouldn't be if Daniel makes a mistake or the next coach makes a mistake, it shouldn't be, he's made a mistake, get rid of him. But that's what it seems to still be a bit like in our country. We have to create that support around them.
But British coaches will only manage in the Premier League if they get a team promoted. There's no way, I can't say for definite, but I'm pretty certain there's no way today Sean Dyche, Eddie Howe or Chris Wilder will be Premier League managers unless they've got their teams promoted. So there is that kind of like, you want to bring in British coaches, and you mentioned Steve Cooper, and you could mention several other good English coaches around both in the EFL and beyond, but they don't seem to get a chance unless they actually get the team promoted. I mean, Huddersfield brought in Jan Sivo, who's been pretty much a disaster since he arrived, rather than giving an Englishman a chance.
Yeah, but that's how it is. But we've got to change it. We've somehow got to change it, and we need more. We need more of these young British managers coming in with more of an open mind. I think if I look at my experience over the last few years of interviewing managers in terms of jobs, whether it be here or at Huddersfield, you still get a lack of belief in young players. There's still a lack of belief in the foreign transfer market. And it's like, no, I need solid English pros to get me out of the Championship. Well, no, you don't. That's just what you think. And it's like, so they've also got to show that. They've also got, in my opinion, take more risk for jobs. You've got to go and do the Nathan Jones story. I look at him and go, played abroad, gone to Charlton under 23s, goes to Brighton 23s, become assistant at Brighton, works with some great managers, then takes a massive risk going to Luton, big club, big pressure in terms of League 2 standards, gets them promoted, and now he's got a great job at Stoke. And more of ours have got to do that, and they've got to be willing to maybe sacrifice a bit of salary, sacrifice a bit of ego, that, you know what, you are going to go to a level where sometimes you might have to help wash the kit still and do some other things which would, they don't really want to do. So I think that's the other thing, we've got to have more who take the opportunity. And if you look at someone that are coming through, obviously the lad Lowe at Bury's just got promoted, done a fantastic job playing in a real sort of good style of play, and we got to celebrate that success, and fair play for him to taking that chance, and hopefully he'll get an opportunity. But I think it'll naturally come, because I think as we're getting better players coming through, because we are, for a fact now, we're European, definitely leaders in Europe in terms of young players. I think the coaches will naturally do that, and I think the work that Dan Ashworth and Gareth and the FA have done over the last 5-6 years, I think 5-6 years down the line we'll start to really see that. I think it's a process, but I think the next sort of set come in will do that. We just need ones to be successful. We need them to pick the right club with the right support and then be successful. And then I think a bit like the German model, where you've seen loads of German coaches the last 10 years just come through like a conveyor belt. I genuinely think that'll be in England soon. Well, England and Wales obviously being Welsh. So.
Stuart, is Timu some of the best transfer business you've ever done?
Yeah, I think he has to be. Yeah, for sure. He's yeah. It's no easy. Yeah. I can't elaborate on that. I think it is. Yeah.
How do you go out and find the next team?
I think it's difficult, but that's our job, and that's the job of Kieran and the scouting team, is to be constantly looking for this sort of type of player, and the success of him has been brilliant. But that's our challenge, and we have to try and achieve that, because we haven't got the ability to just go and buy a £30 million version of him to go and do it, which brings maybe a level of certainty. So we've got to keep doing it, but then we've got to keep doing chances, and then we have to keep making sure we've got an environment that they come into where they can thrive. And I think if you hear Timu speak, he come into a club which wanted him, who loved him, with a coach who loved him, developed him, teammates. All them things have made it work. I don't think he could have just dumped Timu anywhere. I think he needed to come into a place where he gets fully respected, looked after, treated, properly, to then get the best out of him. And I think that's credit to the environment that we've, led by Daniel, created.
And just finally, on so we're talking about James Maddison earlier on and him going on, have you noticed the sharks circling for some of your young players already? Because obviously their success is going to draw plenty of eyes from the Premier League and the rest of the world.
No one yet. Listen, they're top players, and I'm sure there'll be an interest of some sort. But the nice thing now is we don't have to sell them. Obviously, if an offer is ridiculous, that's football, and we'll see where that goes. But we don't have to, which is nice. And I'd be saying to any of our young players, go and prove yourself in the Premier League, because at the moment they've only proved themselves in the Championship, and now they're going to have an opportunity with a coach who plays them, coach who backs them, club who backs them, to go and do it on the greatest stage of all, and go to places like Old Trafford and show that you deserve to play at that level. Because I think our young players now should be thinking not about just playing in the Premier League, but becoming top Premier League players, but they've got to go and prove that. At the minute they've proven to be top Championship players, and all credit to them, but now it's the next level, and they've got to stay humble, and they've got to continue to be the good people that they are to possibly achieve that. Because if they go 5% off, then they'll lose their way, and that's what we've got to guard against.
Some of the entertainment this season has been fantastic. So many late goals and high-scoring games. Is there going to have to be a slight switch when it comes to the Premier League?
It's probably more a question for Daniel, but fundamentally, we've got our belief of how we want to play, and we don't see that change. I think what happens is the style remains the same, but probably strategy changes. So we'll still play within our style, but the strategy when you go to certain places has to be different. If you go toe-to-toe with Liverpool at Anfield, you can be 4 down in 10 minutes thinking, oh my God, what's going on here? So we can't do that, but at the same time we have to be brave and be a little bit naive, because what's the point of going there being scared? If that's the case, let's ring the Football League and say, listen, we'll give someone else a go, we don't want to get there. A big believer is we've overachieved this season, no one expected us to do anything. It's like we have to go with that same attitude, and if it's not, at the end of it we're not good enough, that's alright, but at least at the end of it we can look in the mirror and go, say, well, we had a good go, we didn't just go there and just bottle it or whatever.
Stuart, with that in mind,
last question please.
Stuart, with that in mind, as a Premier League team and what you've said about the way you started this season, how important is it going to be in terms of the way you deal with defeats? Because you may lose more games next season than you have this season. I'm talking about players, fans, Daniel, everybody. The way you handle a defeat is going to be important next season, isn't it?
Vital, and we're going to need the likes of yours help on that, because we will lose games next year as we did this year, and we're going to need an element of calm. It's what we can't do is then go against what our beliefs are and what our principles are, because then we definitely fail, because then it just snowballs into a disastrous sort of failure. But yeah, we've got to stick and believe what we've got to do, and we've got to learn. The only way to learn, we believe, is unfortunately when it goes wrong. You learn more when it goes wrong than when it goes right. So when it does happen, or if it does happen that we lose games and it's not quite working, that's where we've got to learn, and that's when our players and Daniel and all our staff will grow and get better. And that has to be the attitude we have, because we've got a lot of young players, a lot of young staff, so there's still growth in these guys. But that will probably only happen when things don't go perfect.